Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Impactful Conversations. It is my pleasure to bring this episode to you. We're back after a bit of a short break, and we're back with a new series, which I'm really, really excited to talk to you about, and with my first guest as well, who I'll introduce shortly. But what this series is the Energy Expert Stories series. And what this is about is just interviewing some of the energy experts that we have around the world. And this is a continuation of a series that you'll know that we did earlier in the year, which is the Critical Infrastructure series. And what that really is about um, is it's a series where we interview various experts around the globe on critical infrastructure and energy, and with the goal of building a community that's centered on innovation and a community that is vibrant with energy, if you'll excuse the pun. And what that really is about is just forming a community once again with centered on knowledge and sharing the knowledge and sharing the lessons that we've each learned through our journeys. Um, and this series is powered by Sebenzana, so we're very, very thrilled to have them on board, powering the series ahead, and very excited to chart the course over the next few episodes. And I think very, very excited of the guests to come. And the first guest today is a gentleman called Tom Canning, who joins me. And before I greet Tom, let me just tell you a little bit about him. Tom is a consultant engineer. In power engineering mainly, but he specializes in thermal efficiency, in electrical services, in control and instrumentation, power stations, mining materials, explosive factory, big process industries. So he is an expert of many, many things, and very, very thrilled to have him here. Tom is Irish, which you'll be able to tell very, very soon. But he's also worked, as I understand it, in the Gambia in West Africa, as well as a bit in South Africa as well. So he comes with a plethora of experience and a plethora of lessons and stories that we're going to try to glean from him throughout this episode. So, Tom, good morning to you. Very, very thrilled to have you here in the room. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Tafa, and good morning to all your listeners. Yeah, now this is a great day here. So just as you're heading into deepest winter, we are heading into our from spring into summer here in Ireland, and so we are also heading from hard lockdown into light lockdown into freedom. So yeah, this is we're heading from darkness to light here at the moment. So yeah, it's all good here.
That's great, Tom. That's absolutely fantastic. And thank you so much for joining me for this Energy Experts Stories series that we're kicking off today, which is powered by Sebenzana. Tom, I typically would start, and I will start, by allowing the listener to get to know you a little bit better. And you and I have had, many a conversation offline, so a lot of the stuff I already know. But, just for the listener, I'd be very interested to know, where were you born? Where did you grow up? And what are you passionate about?
Mhm. Yeah, so I was born in Dublin in Ireland 60 years ago, and it was a very different place then. I
Mm.
grew up in Dublin. It's a medium-sized European city, so it's got all of the kind of the history that comes with that, and it's a colourful place.
Yeah.
And there's the Irish are a very colourful and vibrant people by European standards. So it was a good place to grow up.
Mm.
Um, I've been passionate about everything about living. That's the important thing is that life is for living. We have one spin around the merry-go-round and making the most of it. not looking back, enjoying, contributing. Life is what you invest in it. You make your own life. And if you invest heavily, you will have an interesting life. If you don't, you won't. So I've been I try to be to keep an interest in everything. It's impossible to be interested in everything, but I don't think that there's any limits to what people should think or learn from. As you, of course, have always said as well, you have to be able to learn from everybody in all parts of society.
Yeah, and I absolutely love what you said there around, life is what you invest in it, right? I think that's a really, really profound statement. Talking about one of your passions, which I know is engineering, different types of engineering, but also I know is engineering as a whole. Quite curious, where did that passion start? And walk me through that journey of how it sort of developed.
Yeah, I was always an engineer. I just didn't know what it was called. I was extremely lucky, and most engineers don't have this luck, that I was from a small child. I was always taking things apart, figuring out how they worked, building things, building machines. I mean, the origin of engineering is building engines, building machines to do things. And so as a child, I was always building things for games and building things to do tricks or so forth. Later on, I went to school, obviously, and somebody mentioned that I should consider engineering in college. I didn't know what it was called, but when I arrived in engineering, it turned out I now had a name for what I had been doing all my life. So that was a great discovery for me. And yeah, I'm very conscious of how lucky I am to have already been an engineer, because most of the guys I was starting college with were painfully discovering, how to do it. Whereas for me, it was already there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's quite an interesting take, in the sense that it was always there, and is a sort of a passion that was there from, well, not necessarily from the beginning, but from the very early stages of life. Tom, your story fascinates me, and the reason I say that is because, well, for many reasons, but one of the reasons is you have taken what I'd call a few bold steps to travel to different countries, to work in different countries. Bold steps to sort of, go traverse the world, work in different environments, be in environments where, people speak different languages to the languages that you know, and so on. What's always emboldened you to take these steps, as it were, that aren't common? I'm really, really curious to dig into that.
Yeah, I think that, you see, they are common in certain cultures, and here again, I was lucky or unlucky, if you prefer, that in Ireland it's a small, and when I was born, it was an impoverished country on the edge of Europe, and so traveling for the Irish was very, very common. I mean, Irish are huge group that make up, large parts of the US, Australia, the UK, many places in Europe, and people travelled for work, and of course they settled where they landed, and so traveling was normal for us. So, as you say, it's not normal for South Africans, but it is for us, and or at least it was when I was, a teenager.
Mm.
So, I mean, I would have gone to work first time I ever went abroad. I would have gone to work in the Netherlands. I was age 17, and I was packing stuff in a factory, and that was my first experience of being abroad,
Mm.
being in different culture, trying to learn different cultures, different languages. But again, uh, Ireland does, on the edge of Europe, does have the great advantage that we are close to so many different countries,
Mm.
and traveling is in our blood. So yeah, it wasn't as big a step as you might think.
Yeah.
The initial step.
Mm.
Uh, Later on, of course, after I became an engineer formally,
Mm.
I was traveling a lot for work, and to many, many different countries.
Yeah.
And that then brought it with it a whole different dynamic. But the initial thing was also for work. It was to make money to go to college and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And tell me, what are so? I mean, you having worked in different countries and different environments, and I think, with the context of, maybe speaking to young professionals of different types of disciplines and so on.
Oh,
What are some of the tools that you needed to be able to adapt to different environment? Or, but I mean by tools is, some of the key sort of tips that you would give, I guess, to say,
okay.
how do you adapt to different environments that aren't similar to your home environment, your comfortable
Yeah.
environment, as it were.
Yeah, or maybe it's what those that traveling gives you.
Mm.
It gives you that necessity of being responsive
Yeah.
to different situations that you find yourself in,
Mm.
of having to adjust, having to adapt,
Mm.
having to deal with change when it's imposed upon you
Yeah.
by the traveling and so forth. So rather than me bringing it to that situation, I think probably I got it from it. I
Mm.
got it from traveling. You learn tricks. Getting a map. Finding your way around town.
Yeah.
Navigating transport systems.
Mm.
Talking to people.
Mm.
Learning how to get jobs, learning how to get places to live and so forth. You've got to do these things quickly and efficiently, and I think I learned those from traveling rather than bringing them to the thing, and
Yeah.
that of course helped me later
Mm.
when I was traveling quite a bit
Mm.
for engineering work, because you've got to learn to be efficient in getting round.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's always fascinating, right? I once in, interned as an engineer at a lab in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil,
Wow.
uh, when I was a student. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I made the mistake of traveling to Brazil, with absolutely no idea how to speak Portuguese.
Right.
And I made the assumption that I think they'd hosted I think it was the Olympics the year before. I made the assumption that I'd be able to survive, with English as a language. And to my shock and horror, once I got to Sao Paulo, after my flight, trying to connect to Rio de Janeiro, looking for frantically trying to see airport signs in English.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't find a single one. Right, I had to sort of, I think I circled the airport probably about 5 or 6 times before I managed to find the domestic section of the airport.
Ah,
So I think it's always quite quite an interesting experience to to go to different environments. And as you're right, you have to be efficient in that, and you have to have the tools to actually do that. Otherwise, you learn as I learned. Once you're already
No,
there, once you're
no,
already
but
getting going, yeah,
that is how I learned.
yeah,
I obviously um, you must be not be afraid to talk to people, to ask questions, and so forth. People are in the main helpful and generous with their time. So and they will help you out. But yeah, everybody allow plenty of time for your first visits, because
yeah,
you're going to go a lot of circles.
absolutely,
You know,
absolutely. I
uh,
think it's
but you will get better at it very, very quickly.
yeah,
Um, and failing is important. Failing is important. Making mistakes are important
mm,
in learning.
absolutely,
It's I always tell young engineers um, that it's making mistakes is not an issue. It's how you recover from those mistakes.
mm,
Is all about it.
mm.
Look at me. Look at I've made more mistakes than you will ever make. That's the important thing.
Yeah, it's about how you recover. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So Tom, we started off quite fast, digging into your life and your journey, but we can
Sure.
slow it down briefly a little bit. Of all the cities, towns that you've visited, worked in, which would you say is your favorite? If I had to sort of make you sort of cast back to all the places that you visited, which one has a sort of a fond memory in your mind?
Oh man, so many, so many. Um, okay, first and foremost, obviously, um, uh, Johannesburg is not a beautiful city, but I have so many friends there, and so many people I like to see, things that I've been involved in there.
Mm,
So, I mean, obviously, it is a warm place in my heart.
yes.
It's not the most beautiful town in the world, but uh, it's a very comfortable place for me.
Mm,
Of all the places I worked, oh man, I would say standout places. Vietnam, Saigon, what's called Ho Chi Minh City.
mhm,
Absolutely amazing place. In Europe, Prague, I think,
mhm,
is it's either my the most beautiful city in Europe. I would think is either Saint Petersburg in Russia, that was previously known as Leningrad,
mhm,
Prague, Czech Republic,
mm.
Nuremberg in Germany, beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful town, Amsterdam. Um, yeah, Amsterdam is just such a fun place, and I think Sorrento in Italy as well,
nice.
would be a place that I've lived and enjoyed quite a bit.
Mm.
Oh, I could go on and on. I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm going to have a lot of trouble picking out one. Uh, if but yeah, there are wonderful places all around the world,
I
and I've
think
never been, and I've never, unlike you, I've never been to South America. So
sure.
I've been to Central America a few times, but never to South America. So
Okay.
it's that's a whole place I've got to discover.
Sure. Yeah, look, it's an amazing. Well, I can only speak about Brazil, an amazing country. Truly, I think yeah, just an amazing experience having gone there. I think I worked there for 2 months as a student. It was yeah, that's absolutely lovely experience.
Sure.
And yeah, I think it becomes difficult to name your favorite place, when you've worked in so many. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just becomes all the more difficult. So I do accept that was a difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's
so
very, very, very tough. Yeah.
yeah. Tom, sometimes people have a perception about engineers. um, that we're a bit boring as people, and that we don't like to do anything for fun, or rather, our life is our work. But I'm curious, from your side, what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah. There are plenty of engineers who are boring.
That's right.
Yeah, and who concentrate on it. But engineering is a lot bigger, obviously, than people understand.
Absolutely.
And that's a big learning thing.
Mm.
And engineers are a much wider group than people know as well. For me, it's music. Yeah, in Ireland, it's common for people to play music and to play in an informal setting.
Mhm.
Um, it's one thing that unfortunately is missing in South Africa generally is just a place where people can meet up and play a few songs, play together in informal settings, where people don't have to be professional standard. They can just enjoy music. This is something that I would do a few times a week here.
Sure.
We would playing, singing. Today, I'm just getting our place here ready. We will have a dozen musicians here
Wow.
in a few hours' time, celebrating our new lockdown freedoms, and we will just sit around and play songs until the wee hours. So yeah, that's my main thing for fun.
That's amazing. That's absolutely incredible. Yeah, that really is. It really is fascinating, Tom. And what would you say is what's a typical working day in your life? What time does it start? What time does it finish? How
Ah,
does it go? How
uh,
what is a typical day in your life?
after a year and a half of lockdown, I hardly remember. Um, uh, obviously, I spent 30 years doing kind of very standard type of working regimen,
Mm,
uh, office in the morning or out on the site and power stations. And my particular job in testing plant meant that I was working weekends, nights,
mm.
uh, uh, every day of the year. I've never worked on a Christmas day. In all of the years, I've never worked on a Christmas day. I don't know why that is. Um, uh, but I've worked every other hour of the day and every other day of the year.
Mm,
So that has been most of my working life. Obviously, since I retired from that kind of work, uh, consultancy work is more for me. I've always worked as a specialist, so consequently, people bring me in for particular problems,
mhm,
and so consequently, I spend a lot of time just surfing, dealing with mails and so forth. But then when I go on site, then it is, on site for days to weeks to solve whatever particular problem,
mm.
bring particular testing, gathering equipment, and so forth. So yeah, it's very variable. Obviously, in the last year, um, it's been extremely disrupted. Um,
Yeah.
um, but it can be on any day of the week. I've just finished a lot of work for Qatar, and their week starts on a Sunday. So you
Sure.
think of Sunday morning as meeting start first thing early Sunday morning, uh,
Sure.
and get into the week then.
Mm.
Uh, that's kind of a strange feeling,
Sure.
8 a.m. on Sunday as being your start of your week,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. That,
extremely variable.
that's
No,
that,
no,
that's
no, no, no easy pattern to identify.
Yeah, that's almost quite nice because it keeps you on your toes, I guess, and make sure that you don't slip into a comfortable routine, which is a good thing at times, but a bad thing at other times as well.
Yeah, I would say that when you're working as a specialist consultant,
Mm,
there's a great advantage in that you will be very busy
mm,
for periods of time, but you'll also be not busy for periods of time.
mm.
And so that's when you can go and attend to the garden or the rest of your life and your family
Yes,
and friends, and
yes,
you can get into work
yeah.
uh, for in those kind of contexts.
Mm.
Unfortunately, engineers are very popular with family and friends,
Yes.
and yeah, I will be working here with a shovel and spade. It'll be a little bit different to what I do when I go in, but it's important to keep your hands dirty. Don't be afraid of getting into it, mixing with it, and doing whatever needs to be done to get the job done.
Absolutely, absolutely, and thank you for sharing that, Tom. And yes, I guess now we I'd like us to dive into a topic that I'm very excited to get your thoughts on, which is around learning lessons to build a sustainable future.
Yeah,
And really, I think, keeping sort of in line around, in terms of the overall series, very curious, to get your thoughts around, what parallels you can draw between the general landscape in South Africa and any other countries that you've worked in, lived in, and traversed, and so on. Yeah, I'm very, very curious to get your take on that, in terms of the lessons or the parallels that can be drawn between the two, or the three, or the four, depending on
uh,
which parallels can be drawn.
sure, sure. Well, when I go to South Africa, I mean, the main parallels that I would draw is with my home country here, Ireland, and when I like to think that South Africa will find its way to having a society that can help everybody to come along and to prosper.
Mm,
And I think of the people that I've met there. I think of them in terms of Irish history. Uh, uh, 100 years ago, Ireland was got its freedom from an external oppressor,
mhm,
and so consequently, that has very much marked our society.
mhm,
We would have emerged as an impoverished nation
mhm,
on the edge of Europe.
mhm,
It's 100 years ago in a few months' time. Just at the moment here, where people are marking a lot of the centenary of a lot of events that
mhm,
happened at that time.
mhm,
And I see parallels with South Africa, with the emergence of the new South Africa
mhm,
um, from all of its travails. In particular, I think of my grandfather who would have fought in that battle for freedom,
mhm,
my father who would have taken over from him,
mhm,
um, and my generation, and then of course there's the generations afterwards.
mhm,
The 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 chief thing was that the guys who did that fighting and achieved independence for Ireland
mhm.
were not the guys who were best suited for building the country afterwards,
Interesting.
because they were um, scarred by battle
Mhm,
and hardened in attitudes. And, the idea that you uh, beat your swords into plowshares Uh, it's in fact a very hard one for to happen. And Ireland made many mistakes in how it dealt with the history of the 20th century. And it wasn't until my father's generation came in that they were able to take control, walk away from some of the attitudes, the hardened attitudes, and to approach things with a more open idea, to improve society, to favour prosperity over ideology, and to move society forward. So, when I was young, I mean, Ireland was, as I say, a very impoverished country, and now it's, I think you could consider it a very prosperous country. And it doesn't have the natural resources that South Africa has, and it did it with intelligence and most of all with education. And when I look at South Africa, I see so many great people, so many great things, and I also see so many false paths and unfortunate routes that things have gone. But I still remain hopeful for South Africa because I have a longer term view, a longer view of the future. But it is about bringing all of the people into making that future.
Yep.
And education is absolutely the key. I know we're supposed to be talking about infrastructure and what is can build a sustainable country. South Africa. I'm going to tell you that the infrastructure under the infrastructure is education.
Love that.
There is no thing more important, and especially for women, because the society has to change, the people have to change, they have to be adaptable, they have to be able to walk away from stuff in the past, and they have to be able to build a future. And unfortunately, I meet a lot of South Africans that don't know their history. They don't know, they're not, a lot are not getting education right now that they need. And that is unfortunate. And, but I, again, am sure that this is something that will be changed. I would just ask that it be changed quicker and quicker.
Absolutely.
We were very lucky. There were a lot of people with foresight 50 and 100 years ago who realized that if we didn't get education at the basic level and bring people along and move it up through the ranks and make education accessible, cheap, ultimately free and accessible for everyone, that they would not, that the country would not prevail. They were right. They were more right than they could have known. Ireland is a very prosperous country now. It has no natural resources. It has no gold, platinum, diamonds, none of those things. Everything we do is done with intelligence. So Ireland now makes its money in two chief areas. One is the computers, so all the Apples and Intels and so forth all make their bits and pieces here. And also in biopharma, all of the big pharmaceutical companies in the world
Yeah.
make their stuff here.
Mm.
So while it still is um, in many ways an agricultural country as well, it's big open spaces. This is its original task was to be a breadbasket for the British Empire, but now it's moved far away from that,
Mm.
and it's with skills that have driven it.
Mm.
This is the most important structure for
Yeah.
making a renewable and sustainable society.
Yeah.
And if I can just ask South Africa to make it happen as quickly as possible.
Mm.
It's one I do feel that there's a lack of understanding on the importance of education.
Mm. Mm. And I think what you said in terms of education is the infrastructure behind the infrastructure, right?
That's right.
And that's actually the foundation that we have to get right, and to get right as quickly as possible. Um, if I had to ask you, in South Africa, um, so in terms of building a sustainable future, um, both energy and society, firstly, what is that sustainable future looking like? And who do you think are the major role players within that? And amongst the role players, do you think that young professionals have a role to play within that? And if not, or if so, how so? Can the young generation play a role in building the future as well?
Yes. Oh, yeah. So many questions there. Yes,
Yeah.
there's
Loaded,
uh,
very loaded. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's fine. That's fine. Let me step through them one by one.
yeah,
Um, Obviously, as I said, I think education is most important. I
mm,
think building a respect for education,
mm,
and through a teaching profession that's of the best in the country,
mm,
training the trainers, training the people that will bring on the people, and will also uh, uh, inculcate in the minds of people that change is important.
mm,
Traditions have their place,
mm,
but when it comes to making a sustainable and prosperous country, change and a light-footed approach that allows you to be adaptable when changes are required. These are absolutely crucial,
okay,
crucial skills for traveling, as we said earlier,
mm,
but crucial skills for living,
mm,
and especially for engineers.
yeah,
I think the importance of having being able to find a third way, being able to fix problems in a creative way.
mm,
This is all important, and it's all down to having that adaptable uh, uh, population. Who are the main players? The
mm,
government has to get on board with this. It's too big for small institutions and so
yeah,
forth.
mm,
It's got to be something that the government will set uh, aside large resources and build for the future.
mm,
Not build to the short term, but build for the future.
mm,
Nobody else can institute that kind of change. It's got to be led from the front.
mm,
Those leaders are going to come not from the people who liberated the country. Those leaders have to come from a new cadre, a cadre of the sons and daughters of those people. Just as in Ireland, um, my grandfather's generation, uh, they just they caused the country to stagnate
mm,
for decades, because they were driven by ideology,
mm,
and uh, it was my father's generation that took control of the country, and when they were given the wheels of power, when they were given control, they were the ones who changed the country, and began to improve things for people. They were the ones who drove, education down to every corner and to the poorest of the poor. They were the ones who built on the back of hard labor the prosperity that we have today. And so that generation is ready to take over in South Africa now, and needs to. And we need to walk away from the past and build a unified society in South Africa. So the government is, it's inescapable that the government is going to be a major player. Of course, all kinds of individual industries and so forth can contribute. And of course, many industries do give extensive education. But, till we have a situation where people are promoted entirely on merit and the country advances, the best people are put into the best positions, until that happens, there will be stagnation, there will at least be delay in getting these things to happen. So finally, getting to your last piece, young professionals, do they have a part to play? Okay, that's obvious. So if that's just what I've said. If the best people get into the best positions, into leadership roles, and are educated and have sufficiently large perspective to realize that the longer term is what we've got to play for here. Not individual, not personal gain, but the longer term. That if we get to that point, then South Africa has everything it needs to take off.
And I think that phrase that you used last, right, to take off, is so important. I think when we look at it, you're quite right in the sense that the young professionals do have a role to play, and a massive one actually, in terms of charting the long-term future of South Africa, of the different societies within it. And I think, when you speak about education, making it as accessible as possible to as many people as possible, or, in fact, to everyone, that's an incredibly important foundation that needs to be in place for us to build the house that is going to be the South Africa of the future. And I think, there's many different ways that we can traverse that. There's many different ways we can go through that journey. But ultimately, the journey is happening, and it is now. And we need to ensure that, we take this house in the right direction, we build it on the right foundations, which I think is an incredibly important point, Tom. And that actually does bring us to a close. But, before we do close, Tom, I just want to thank you for giving us, I think, what is an incredibly unique perspective, and an incredibly unique set of lessons that you've seen, experienced, learned, that you've brushed past as well. It doesn't feel like we've been speaking for as long as we have been speaking, but it's just absolutely whizzed by. But I want to thank you for giving us the lessons and the tools that you have seen that can help us to build a sustainable future, and for charting or showing us a way of actually building a sustainable future, but actually reminding us that sustainable future is built on education, and and free and accessible education to as many people as possible. So Tom, I just want to thank you so much. I hope that you have enjoyed it. I hope that it's been a wonderful experience being on Impactful Conversations. and I look forward to welcoming you back on the show sometime in the future.
Oh, well, oh, thank you very much. Yeah, no, that's the message. But especially for societal change, make sure that education is for women and for men.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely crucial.
Very
I'd like to just uh, stick
re-emphasize.
that in again, please. Yes, thank you for allowing me to chat here today about one of my favorite places.
Yeah, no, Tom, I want to thank you so much once again. And I think it was super, super, super impactful. And I think anybody who's listening to this would definitely agree. Thought-provoking, impactful. I think it will garner, discussion on, how can we chart the way forward as well. And so to you, the listener, from Tom and myself, we want to thank you for joining us for this fireside chat. It's a cold morning in South Africa. I know it's not so cold in Ireland, and the reference of cold is a bit different. What I call cold is probably what Tom calls, fair, fair weather. So it's a cold morning here in South Africa, but I want to thank you so much to you, the listener and the viewer, for joining us. For another episode of Impactful Conversations, and I look forward to welcoming you back on the platform in the next episodes. Do check out the website, which is impactfulconversations.co.za, and please do subscribe to the YouTube channel as well as to the podcast platform that you're listening on. And yeah, we do really, really appreciate your support and your consistent engagement with the platform. It continues to evolve and make the community much better for it. And yeah, we sincerely appreciate it. But from Tom and myself, we just want to say thank you so much and goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.